Hey guys, tonight we are going to explore a realm of ancient history so profoundly boring, so deliciously specific, it's practically a lullaby. We are talking about hinges. Yes, the things that make doors open and close. You probably think this is the most secure topic in the history of sleep content, but trust me, we are going deep into the mechanics of minor household hardware and the one forgotten deity who truly cared. Imagine yourself now in a quiet, sun-drenched corner of ancient Greece. Maybe Crete, maybe Rhodes. The air is thick with the scent of dried herbs and distant salt, and the only sounds are the buzz of cicadas and the soft thud of a potter working clay nearby. You are standing before an unremarkable door, a heavy wooden slab held in place by metal pivots or leather straps, depending on how far back and how rich your owner is. Now, every time that door swings open or shut, there's a little bit of magic happening, or at least a lot of meticulous maintenance. Our story begins with Karkinos, the minor god of the perfect pivot and the silent hinge. I know, it sounds like something I just made up, but the ancient world was full of hyper-specific, highly specialized deities, and Karkinos was the quiet champion of domestic silence. He wasn't like Zeus, flinging lightning bolts and causing drama. Karkinos was the guy who, if you had a door, you hoped he was having a good day. His worship was less about grand temples and more about ensuring that the main gate didn't shriek like a banshee every time a slave brought in the morning bread. This gives you a gentle reality check. Most ancient life was loud. Very, very loud. If you think your neighbor's rusty car door is annoying, you probably won't survive a single Roman apartment block's worth of squealing cardines, the technical name for the pivots that ancient doors rotated on. Karkinos' goal wasn't just functionality. It was aesthetics of silence. He believed that the sound a door made was a direct reflection of the homeowner's soul, or at least their oil budget. A smooth, nearly silent sweep, perhaps just a gentle whoosh of air, meant domestic peace. A screeching, grinding noise meant neglect, and neglect in Karkinos' mind was the ultimate sacrilege. Historians still argue whether Karkinos was a purely local deity, perhaps only revered in workshops of carpenters and bronzesmiths, or if his gentle influence spanned the entire Mediterranean, working unseen beneath the heavy portico doors of grand villas. I like to think he was everywhere, a quiet, omnipresent force judging every slight metal-on-metal groan. Think of him as the original quality control inspector for home hardware, an unseen entity whose entire life revolved around preventing that one truly terrible, ear-splitting EEEEK that ruins an otherwise perfect afternoon nap. That's his whole deal. You probably won't find a statue of him in the Louvre, but every time you open a well-oiled door, you are walking in his gentle, almost imperceptible shadow. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and the local time in the comments. It's always soothing to see how far these boring journeys travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk past the larger, bustling temples dedicated to Athena or Apollo, with their crowds of worshippers, clanging bells, and sacrificial smoke. Karkinos' shrine, however, is a different experience entirely. You trudge down a narrow, sun-baked lane in the Aegean town, let's call it Siga, the city of silence, and you find his sacred place tucked into a shadowy corner behind a baker's shop. It's not grand. In fact, it barely qualifies as a building. It's more of a deep, cool alcove, maybe 6 feet wide, carved into the side of a larger stone structure. The air here is noticeably still, and the ground before the niche is swept clean. There's no dramatic altar, only a low, smooth stone shelf. This is the temple of the silent pivot. Imagine stepping into a quiet library on a weekday afternoon, and you're close to the feeling. The most striking element is the array of offerings. You might expect jewels or gold, but Karkinos is a god of utility and precision. Instead, the shelf is dotted with small, carefully curated objects, tiny clay pots of olive oil, perhaps mixed with beeswax for viscosity, small worn leather thongs for primitive door hinges, and most beautifully, countless pieces of polished bronze and iron. These aren't finished hinges, mind you, but components. A perfectly smoothed pivot pin, a flawlessly cast door sleeve, or maybe just a handful of perfectly spherical bronze balls used to reduce friction on heavy gates. These offerings weren't simply random, they were demonstrations of craftsmanship and respect for mechanics. A carpenter, before installing a new set of bronze cardines on a wealthy merchant's house, might bring the pivot pins here, anoint them with oil, and whisper a gentle prayer to Karkinos for a lifetime of smooth, silent operation. This is a delightful, quirky tidbit. The ancient mind often attributed godly intention to mundane physical properties, and Karkinos was the deification of mechanical ease. His worshippers weren't generals or senators, they were the humble artisans, the blacksmiths, the joiners, and even the house slaves responsible for daily upkeep. Their goal was to prevent the screech, because a screeching door meant bad luck, sure, but mostly it meant an angry master who couldn't sleep. You notice a small, weathered relief carved into the back wall of the niche. It doesn't depict a fierce god with a thunderbolt. No, Karkinos is shown as a benign, slightly stout figure wearing the modest tunic of a craftsman, holding not a scepter, but a small, perfectly tapered oil jar and a simple bronze tool that might be a file or a reamer. His expression is one of gentle, perpetual concentration, as if perpetually listening for the faintest sound of friction. Historians still argue whether the tool Karkinos holds is an actual representation of a specific ancient instrument used to bore out the hinge socket, or if it's a symbolic representation of the patience required for fine metalworking. Either way, it's a far cry from the swords and spears of his pantheon mates. As you stand there, perhaps you reach out and gently touch one of the polished bronze pins, still slick with recent oil. It's cool beneath your fingers. The entire scene is a sensory lullaby: cool stone, silent air, the scent of fresh, rich oil. It's the physical embodiment of the quiet moment just before the door smoothly closes, locking out the noise of the day. You realize that to worship Karkinos was to worship the absence of annoyance. And that, my friend, is a worship we can all get behind as we try to drift off tonight. Remember that loudly squealing pivot from the Roman apartment we talked about? This place is its complete, tranquil opposite. Now, let's fast forward a bit and shift our focus geographically, drifting from the quiet Grecian alcove to the bustling, often chaotic environment of a large Roman domus, a wealthy household perhaps in Ostia, or even the sprawling city of Rome itself. You are standing in a magnificent courtyard, and the sheer volume of doors is staggering. They've got outer doors, inner doors, service doors, bedroom doors, doors that lead to the tablinum, the master's office often, and doors to the triclinium, the dining room. All these doors, nearly all of them, relied on the technology Karkinos was so fond of, the pivot hinge, or cardo. Forget modern hinges with their neat, mass-produced barrels and pins. Roman hinge technology was surprisingly sophisticated, but also notoriously maintenance-intensive. The door itself was usually heavy wood, sometimes reinforced with bronze plates. Instead of attaching a separate metal hinge to the door frame, the door was constructed with projections, long cylindrical shafts at the top and bottom corners. These shafts, the actual pivots or cardines, which gives us the root of the word cardinal, meaning fundamental, fit into corresponding sockets. The bottom pivot rested in a socket set into the stone or marble threshold, limen, and the top pivot rotated in a socket embedded in the door lintel. Here is the key mainstream historical fact.
The longevity and quiet operation of a Roman door depended almost entirely on the material the socket was made from and the frequency of lubrication. If the threshold was soft stone, the constant grinding of the heavy wooden pivot would wear it down, making the door sag and stick. If the door was particularly heavy, Roman builders often lined the stone sockets with a bronze bushing, a separate metal sleeve, to reduce friction and prevent the door from eating its way into the house structure. This was high-tech stuff for the time, essentially early ball bearings, but made of sleeve-shaped bronze. This sophistication, however, came at an auditory cost. Think about the friction: heavy wood or bronze scraping against stone or bronze. Without constant attention, this arrangement could produce a screech so piercing it could wake the entire household from their afternoon meridiatio, nap. This brings up our quirky tidbit. The sound of a squeaking door became so common and annoying that it became a running joke and even a literary trope in Roman satire. Poets would complain about doors that sounded like 1,000 dying geese, or doors that announced every clandestine lover's arrival with an ear-splitting shriek. A silent, smoothly operating door was a sign of a truly well-managed, wealthy home. It meant you had slaves dedicated solely to the application of expensive oils and fats. And this brings us to the scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether the high prevalence of bronze bushings in surviving ruins indicates that noise reduction was a primary architectural priority, or if they were simply necessary structural additions to prevent the inevitable destruction of expensive marble thresholds. Was it about quiet enjoyment, or simply saving money on repairs? It's probably a bit of both, but you can feel Karkinos gently tugging on the shoulders of the architects, urging them toward the silent, bronze-lined path. You can almost hear him whispering, "Just a little oil, just a little more care, please, for the love of the perfectly opening door." As you watch a servant carefully drip thick, slightly smelly olive oil mixed with animal fat into a groaning pivot socket, you realize that peace and quiet have always required diligent, sometimes messy effort. The stage is set. Roman households are noisy, pivots are grinding, and the domestic tranquility Karkinos so dearly loved is constantly under threat from the dreaded squeaky door. Karkinos, remember, isn't a god of grand curses or epic battles. His war is a gentle, unseen campaign waged against friction, rust, and neglect. He is the divine embodiment of preventative maintenance, and his entire existence is dedicated to preventing that one truly jarring sound that jolts a wealthy citizen from his midday slumber or interrupts a quiet reading session in the peristyle. Imagine you are one of the household staff, perhaps a trusted villicus, estate manager, and your primary mission, besides managing the books, is ensuring domestic silence. Your reputation, and potentially your back, depends on keeping the house acoustically pleasant. You know the enemy: the metal-on-metal groan, the terrifying high-pitched wood-on-stone shriek, and the slightly less offensive but persistent thud and catch of a door that's settled unevenly. Karkinos, in his quiet way, assists you. His preferred weapons in this subtle war are surprisingly simple. First and foremost, oil. Specifically, the finest, least viscous olive oil they can spare, or perhaps for heavy-duty gates, a mix of animal fats and resin, a kind of proto-grease. The mainstream historical fact here is that lubrication was essential not just for quiet, but for the longevity of the expensive door hardware. The Romans understood that metal parts rubbing together without a barrier were doomed to self-destruct quickly. So the constant dripping, pouring, and wiping of oil onto the pivot sockets was a daily ritual. Think of it like tuning a delicate musical instrument. You have to keep it perfectly balanced and smooth. Here is the quirky tidbit about Karkinos' influence. There are small surviving bronze instruments that look like tiny ladles with long, thin spouts, often found in proximity to wealthy Roman thresholds. Scholars affectionately call them lubrication funnels. They were designed to carefully channel the precious oil directly into the tight gap where the pivot pin met the socket, ensuring minimal waste and maximum penetration. It's highly likely these were considered minor tools of devotion to Karkinos, offering the perfect channeled path for the lubricant to do its silent, friction-killing work. A slight misapplication of the oil meant the door would still squeak and the oil would stain the marble floor, leading to a much louder, more human groan from the Vilicus himself. Karkinos' greatest fear and his gentle opposition was rust. In the moist coastal air of places like Pompeii, iron hinges and pivot points would quickly oxidize, creating a coarse, grinding surface. This produced a sound that was not a quick shriek, but a terrible dragging noise, the sound of history being slowly eroded by neglect. This is why bronze was often preferred over iron for the crucial pivot points, even though it was more expensive. Bronze resists corrosion better, thus maintaining a smoother, quieter surface for longer. Historians still argue whether the preference for bronze in the hinge mechanism of public buildings was purely an aesthetic choice for its golden sheen, or if the longer-lasting, quieter operation it provided was the true primary motivation. Karkinos would certainly vote for the quiet operation. You, the weary household manager, are now kneeling, a small lubrication funnel in hand, slowly pouring the thick, scented olive oil. The scent is heavy and slightly floral. They sometimes mixed rose petals into the oil to mask the animal fat smell. You can feel the relief as the door, which moments ago was sounding like a forgotten siege engine, now swings silently closed, leaving behind only a gentle, satisfying whoosh. You've honored Karkinos, and more importantly, you've earned your meridiatio.
You've done the work, you've pleased Karkinos, and the house is settled into a beautiful, buttery silence. This is the ultimate goal, the architectural perfection that fosters peace and ultimately sleep. This section isn't about the mechanics of the hinge anymore. It's about the feeling of a perfectly functioning environment, a sensation that the minor god of the pivot worked his entire gentle existence to ensure. Imagine the master of the house retreating from the scorching midday sun or the chaos of the forum. He seeks refuge in the cubiculum, bedroom, a room designed specifically to be cool and quiet. He expects that moment when the heavy door swings closed, making only the softest possible noise. This ideal operation is achieved when the bronze pivot pin glides within its oiled bushing, creating zero friction sound, only the faint displacement of air. A soft swoosh followed by the almost imperceptible click of the latch falling into place. This seamless closure is a profound psychological signal. It tells the body and the mind, you are safe, you are secure. The outside world is locked away. This small, quiet detail, a tribute to Karkinos, was crucial to the ability of Romans to enjoy their afternoon nap, the meridiatio. Historians still argue whether the Roman emphasis on acoustic privacy in their domestic architecture stemmed from an innate desire for personal space or was simply a necessity born from the extreme noisiness of the surrounding urban environment. Either way, the silent door became a symbol of well-being, an audible marker of peace. The mainstream historical fact is that the Roman concept of domestic luxury often involved controlling the external environment, whether through hypocaust heating systems, complex window glazing in later periods, or, most fundamentally, by silencing the entrances. A jarring squeak could undo the entire calming effect of a cool marble floor and frescoed walls. It was a disruption that threatened the delicate balance of otium, or dignified leisure. Think of it as the ultimate form of ASMR, ancient style. The gentle, consistent hum of the environment, perhaps a distant fountain, the soft, muffled chatter of slaves from another wing, is only enjoyable if it isn't punctuated by that hideous, high-pitched shriek. Our quirky tidbit is that some wealthy Roman homes even had secondary lightweight inner doors or screens that used cloth hinges or simple wooden dowels rather than heavy metal cardines. These doors were designed purely for acoustic damping, creating a double barrier against sound. These ultra-quiet inner portals were the ultimate nod to the power of silence, a tiny chapel to Karkinos built right into the architecture. You are now inside the cool, dark room. The heavy wooden door,
thanks to the recent application of oil, has moved in the way Karkinos intended, silently, smoothly, sealing you in a bubble of peace. The light fades from the window, and the scent of the oiled bronze is strangely soothing, mixing with the cool, damp smell of the stone. The work is done. The hinge is silent. The mind begins to drift, no longer startled or distracted. The perfect pivot has brought the perfect quiet. You close your eyes, and the gentle stillness begins to wrap around you. Now the heavy door has sealed you away from the world outside, and you are enveloped in the darkness of the room. Let the imagery begin to fade, gentle listener. Don't fight the feeling of profound boredom and safety that this hyper-specific ancient detail provides. The work of Karkinos is complete. The pivot is perfectly aligned, the bronze is slick with the highest quality oil, and you are suspended in a delicious, silent moment of history. Feel the coolness of the air on your skin. Listen to the steady, soft rhythm of your own breathing. Let the thought of ancient Roman architects worrying about a squeaky door become a soft, fuzzy cloud that drifts away. There is no urgency here, only stillness. You are secure inside this architectural silence, a guest in a moment 2,000 years past, where the greatest concern was simply a smooth transition from noise to rest. There is nothing left to do now but to release the tension you didn't even know you were holding and let the silence pull you down, down, down into deep, quiet sleep.